All right, good morning, Mark. Uh, this is our final day of FETC. I'm here with Mark from California. And what do you want to talk about today in the realm of school safety with
I,
Kelly?
I think an important topic that doesn't really get touched upon is the lines of communication between administration and teachers while the specific event is going on.
Uh-huh.
I think I've been in situations where I've kind of wondered. I'm aware that there's a threat going on or there's like an environmental hazard, but we know something is going on, but don't know the explicit details or how long
Right.
the event's going to continue. So I think that's definitely something we should
Right.
talk
So,
about.
my experience has always been after every incident, I strongly encourage everybody to do a an after action review. Right. So, and we're in the communication business, and my experience has been that in those after action reviews, the number one response to this question, what do we need to improve upon, is communication. Communication every time. And so when we start looking at that, how we've got to start asking these questions, like, how do I make sure that if I can't get to everyone, how do I get to enough people to communicate? And we would love to have 100% of the people, but we know that that's not reality. And so, how do we do that? And here's the important thing. So, we talk about two primary things. The first is everyone wants to know what's happening. And second is, what do you want them to do? Right. And are you good with that? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like a lot of times we're informed on the protocols, but then if something happens in the moment that requires adjustment, there isn't necessarily a system to relay that. And I
Right.
think to help kind of manage teacher emotions and they have to be logical through these things.
Right.
I think there needs to be something that is able to communicate these things.
Right. So how do we pivot? Right.
Mhm.
And so um, that's where the need for two-way communication comes in. And of course, we handle that through our app at Crisis Go. If you have a question or a need or a concern, you can just uh, communicate that up, and then they can prioritize how that need is going to be met. But it is important that we understand that while teachers want to know what's happening and what you want them to do, it's not necessarily in that order of priority. From my perspective and my experience, it's really critical that we get you into some sort of protective action, a lockdown, a secure, something like that. And then once we have time, now we can say, okay, this is what's happening, and this is, we're going to check on you. Are you doing okay? Are you safe? What do we do? And how are you guys currently counting for that type of communication? What do you guys do?
I think right now it's pretty much through email, through the PA system. Um, yeah, I think that's about the extent of it.
Yeah.
We do have some radio communication, but it's a limited amount of people, and so probably relaying important things
to your admin staff
Yeah.
and that stuff, but not getting down into the now. I think you said you're a private school. I'm not going to get into the name of the private school, but you're a private school. Do you guys have buses and things like that?
Yeah.
So how do you communicate with them? You can call a friend, phone a friend.
Oh yeah, so we do receive text updates, but it's pretty much concentrated to one person.
Yeah,
That might be an issue if if one part of the chain is lacking in being able to access the console.
Yeah. So there's a lot of technology that's available, and I think you guys have explored it. So I don't want to get into all of that, but the consideration is who needs the information, how do I get it,
Mhm.
and if I have questions, how do I get it to update as an incident commander? How do I just communicate and try to reduce the number of times in the after action report that we say, what was your primary issue? I didn't know, I didn't hear this, I didn't understand this, and which all boils down to communications, and especially in a tight knit community as such in a private school setting. And it's important that we have that because we have a population that, like every other school, expects that we are going to take care of them. And that brings up a um, uh, important factor is how do we communicate with those parents, those family members, especially if it's a live-in type situation. How do we communicate with them, even if our school is not directly impacted, but it's out on the perimeter somewhere in town, and because they're going to hear this, and I don't know a parent out there that doesn't think the worst right away, right? So, um, what other questions do you have about that I can help you with?
Yeah, just kind of want to know like what are the options for like kind of mitigating that, because it's not just relaying to teachers and staff, but also you got to manage those expectations from parents, because I think a lot of them want to directly message their kids. So I think to be able to manage those expectations and emotions too.
Yeah. So a lot of it goes to the um, to your question is how do we train them? How do we work through all of these situations? And who's going to be responsible for that communication? What do we want your parents to do if they hear of something either happening at the campus or near the campus? Who should they be contacting? How do they do that? But it takes some outreach. It takes some perseverance to say, okay, we're responsible for your child, still your child, but we're the ones in possession of your child. So let us help you kind of reduce that stress level and talk to them. And this is what we want you to do. If you hear of this, obviously we don't want you coming into the school because that's just going to create more issues that we have to deal with, and we want to mitigate those. But having the ability to send them to a website. Here's where you're going to go for the best and most current information. This is your point of contact, your communications director, or whatever you call that person, or whoever would handle that, and really work through that. Now, one of the things that I encourage everybody to do is have a communications plan, and that communication plan should be exercised when you do your drills. So even if it's just off as a side, I call it a tabletop exercise, which is if you're doing a full scale drill, let's say, and all of the students are learning how to evacuate or lock down or whatever, take your team, your administrative team, and pull them to the side while that's all happening and saying, okay, who are you supposed to notify? What about the parents? Who's responsible for notifying? How are you getting that out there? Who's our point of contact? Can we provide them with a specific number to call and have that plan? And then that way, every time that you exercise the actual emergency protective action, the lockdown, the secure evacuate shelter, whatever those are that you're using, then we can also exercise that communication piece. And at least people will start understanding what that expectation is.
Yeah, I really like that idea of like sort of stress testing the protocols in place.
Yeah.
And just really figuring out, well, what, based reflecting on how we've executed the drill, like what are some additional systems we need to build in, or like just really trying to narrow the focus of like what we need to improve.
Yeah, like every almost everything that we do in the schools, safety is driven by policy. That drives procedures and protocols that drive our emergency plans and our drills and so forth. So I encourage people to look at their policies. If they're missing some, create them, and then start drilling down. And it is a process. I totally get it. It's a lot of work, and it's oftentimes a lot of work in a field of expertise that no one at the campus actually has. And that's kind of what I do for our customers, is kind of help them and point them in that. I don't do them for them, but I kind of help them along and say, okay, consider this, because everyone has a different.
I think that's great that you're working to figure out what works for you.
Yeah. So that's what we do. Anything else, Mark?
No, that's
Perfect. Thank you so much.
thank you.
And enjoy the rest of the show, like the next hour of the show, because that's all that's left. Awesome.
Thank you.